You ready for your what the fuck moment of the day? Let me show you some real American history.
You ain't gonna believe this.
And the reason that Waymos were burning this weekend...
Cops are using after-school programs to abuse children.
Australia for the white man! Australia for the white man!
You're saying they're brainwashing. Okay, you're saying these people that are experts in brainwashing is using the Department of Education to brainwash our children.
Yes. Are you aware that we are sending $40 million a week to the Taliban?
I am popping in to remind y'all that the KKK has killed more Americans than ISIS and Al-Qaeda combined.
African American community is the only community that has the power in this country to change anything. So African American community, which is the community that is stepped on by Cubans, the most are the only ones that are going to save the Latinos. And I clap for the African American community that has not come out because it is not. I do. We didn't do shit for them.
I get it.
Masses,
but I don't.
me and you support, but in masses. We didn't support anything that was going with them. Latinos look at Cubans specifically, and I'm not going to talk about any other community because I'm not part of that community, even though I'm a Latina with them. Cubans talk shit about African Americans. Cubans did not support African Americans. Cubans think that they all victimize themselves, that all of this, all of that. African Americans are the only ones that are going to save your asses, Latinos. So you better start kissing. If you're going to kiss some ass in this country, you better kiss some black ass.
And this award went to the Carter family, who basically invented country music.
And how Shabuzi has every right to react that way, because the Carter family's music is rooted in black culture. A.P. Carter was known as a song catcher. He traveled across Appalachia collecting songs, and on one of these travels, he met the musician Leslie Riddle. Leslie would take Carter to hear songs at black music venues, where he would remember the melodies, while Carter would write down the lyrics, but would then change them later on to copyright them as new songs. Leslie also taught Carter's sister-in-law Mabel his pick-and-slide style of guitar playing that is now called the Carter Scratch, and to this day is still used in country music. Once the Carter family released the songs, decades later other artists began to cover them, except now they were called the country standards. Leslie Riddle and the black community of artists like DeFord Bailey, Gus Cannon, and countless others laid the foundation for country music, and without them, it wouldn't exist today.
The whole point is to drag you into pointless and a maze of circular logic that you either give up or you lose your temper, right? You present evidence, they question the source. You give them the sources are biased. You show them video footage, the footage is taken out of context. You give them the context, it's complicated. For them, truth is not a destination. Truth is a moving target, right? Everything can be always debated, including gravity, right? Reality for them is another opinion. War crimes becomes allegation, genocide becomes a conflict, dead children becomes casualties in a very sad, complex situation. Words have no meaning anymore, right? So they do all of that while maintaining this calm, reasonable demeanor, like him. He has like a resting genocide face. It's like crazy, right? They're here to waste time while people die. So you don't debate with pathological liars.
You say Europeans never created a civilization.
Show me one. That's the only question I'm saying. Show me a European civilization. Rome was not a civilization. Greece was not a civilization. You don't know a day in the history of Greece where there wasn't a war. You don't know a day in the history of Rome and there wasn't a war. Those are not civilization. Those are death culture, war culture. They're not building anything. They're stealing from other people, borrowing from other people, and still carrying on this anti-human, anti-nature behavior of murdering, stealing to conquer and appropriate something that belonged to someone else that you could have gotten by just shaking their hands and making a deal.
Why are white people so intimidated and threatened by black men, despite their claims that black men are inferior to them and incapable of their own basic task?
Well, there's an easy answer to that question. Then no black men are superior to them. Put us on any playing field, be it physics or football, and we will win. Give us the same opportunities, and we will win. Because we come from a history of not trying to destroy and dominate the world, and you come from a history of trying to destroy and dominate the world, and that has become the culture of the white community.
I'd just like to state my opinion that I think violence is barbaric and stupid and repulsive, and that's my opinion.
But please, may I ask you a question, please? Just for clarification. All right, now, I'm not sure, are you agreeing that capitalism is bad or you don't think it's bad?
I didn't say.
Huh?
I didn't say anything about it.
But what do you think about it?
Capitalism?
Yes.
Well,
well, let me ask you this question.
I live in a capitalist society.
Okay, let me make it easier.
Okay, yeah, please. Yeah.
If you were a slave and I were your master, and the only way for you to be free was to strike your blow to kill me, what would you do?
I had a teacher, a history teacher named Mr. Schultz. If you know, you know. He's one of the best teachers. No, he is the best teacher I've ever had in the history of ever. It was either 10th or 11th grade. He's teaching us about Emmett Till. He got to the part where we're learning about Carolyn Bryant. And he's like, guys, before I say this isn't fact. Okay, I'm not saying this as a fact. This is strictly my opinion, all right? Don't go home being like, Mr. Schultz taught us this. This is my opinion. I'm just talking right now. And we're like, oh my God, scandalous. He's like, I personally believe that Emmett Till never whistled at Carolyn Bryant. And we were like, oh, what? But that's what history taught us. That's what's in the history books. He's like, no. You want to know why I think Emmett Till didn't whistle at Carolyn Bryant? He was like, would you whistle at this? And all of us in unison, like it was a roar of a classroom, like, oh no, ew, what the, no. And he was like, see, this is exactly why. I've been teaching for years, and every single year I show kids this picture, and they are terrified, upset, heartbroken. Guess what? Years and years and years later, it comes out that Carolyn Bryant lied, and Emmett Till never whistled at her. She personally said this in 2007 to Duke University senior research scholar Timothy Tyson. She stated that she had lied about Till having made verbal and physical advances on her. Best teacher I've ever had.
They were very instrumental in getting the Elementary and Secondary Education Act passed, which, as I said before, changed education from knowledge, content-based, academic, to performance-based behavior. And from that time on, because that was necessary for what we're looking at now with school to work agenda, is the planned economy is performance-based.
So they're training workers.
They're training
not thinkers, not leaders.
Exactly. At that time, you had a general, Buck Chisholm, a Canadian general psychiatrist, who was a very close friend of Alger Hiss's. And he gave a speech in 1945 to the World Health Organization, which basically recommended getting rid of the conscience.
Wow.
Yes. And he said we would do it through the schools. We would retrain the teachers to be little psychiatrists. He said it is an international system they're looking at. They're going to change the behavior of the children. They're going to change the teachers' training. They're going to do everything. He told them everything.
And they didn't believe him?
No, they just, well, you know what goes on.
Israel just suppressed a documentary and then killed its creator.
Fatima Husana was a photojournalist in Gaza. A documentary was just made about her, and it got accepted into the Cannes Film Festival 2 days ago. Once Israel found out, 24 hours later, she was murdered by the IDF, including 10 of her family members and her pregnant sister. They dropped a bomb on their house and killed them all.
She had covered what was going on in Gaza for the past 18 months, and she wasn't afraid and even stated that she would be killed for the work that she was doing. It's sad. It's a sad reality, but she has lost her life because of it.
If I'm guilty of this, then every single cop in this nation is going to jail, is what a cop in Iowa just said after being sentenced to 5 years in prison. What do we think he's talking about? Like, it could be so many different things. Take your guesses. For context, he's a part of a 3-person police department for a tiny town in Iowa that's not even 800 people. So what do you think he thinks every single cop in this nation does? If you guessed caring too much, you're correct. I'm just kidding, it's illegal arms dealing. He was first caught because he asked for 90 machine guns for his 3-person police department. Bradley Wint was using his professional position as a police officer for personal profit. He's been convicted of conspiracy to defraud the government, lying to the federal government, and illegal possession of a machine gun. He's been sentenced to 5 years in prison, but remains unapologetic because he says every single cop in this nation does this. Which, I mean, yeah, but a hell of a way to bring down your brothers in arms, if you know what I mean.
I go to white school boards in the suburbs, and the white people who know that I'm coming, because I may advertise it, they let me speak.
We appreciate that.
But the black people in my own community that look like me, y'all have a black governor, a black mayor, predominantly black school board, black officers, and the guy who has a differing viewpoint can't speak in your school board meeting? You are defrauding me of my freedom of speech.
No, we're not. You're talking, right?
No, I'm not able to be heard on record. And that's the problem. This is the issue with why we have failing schools in Baltimore. Because no one wants to change. It's protecting the status quo. Let's protect the CEO of Baltimore Public Schools, who makes $479,000 a year. The kids can't read. The kids can't read, but she makes $500,000 a year. This is not right. No, take me out. It is necessary. I can't go. I've come too far to go too easily.
That's your choice.
If you want to arrest me, you can, brother. If you arrest my speech, arrest my hands. I'm not carrying anything but a microphone and a Bible in my book bag. That's all I got. And y'all silence the black preacher.
So why isn't anybody talking about the fact that today in Dallas, Texas, the FBI and police arrested 244 people in a child trafficking ring? You heard what I just said? In Dallas, Texas, they arrested 244 people that were child predators. And the best part about this whole thing is that they found 109 missing children. So apparently this trafficking ring has been going on for a very, very long time. But the FBI and the police are saying that this is only the beginning. They're about to start cracking down on each and every child predator. Now, of course, we know that media tries to keep these things very hush-hush because there's a lot of people involved in these things that they won't like to mention. But children go missing all over this world, all over the United States. And we need answers. And even though they found 109 children, they need to find 109 more. And after that, find 109 more. And they need to arrest more people for these crimes. And now you gotta ask yourself, if they were able to find 109 kids that were missing and arrest 244 people that had something to do with this, how many more kids are missing? How many more people need to be arrested?
Can you name other instances of foreign aid going to terrorist organizations?
We have assisted Al-Shabaab in Somalia. There's been instances of the Khamsi network in Sudan, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Kataib al-Hezbollah, Hayat Tahrir al-Shams in Syria. Dozens of terror organizations have received indirect assistance from U.S. foreign aid.
Someone just filmed a couple of pallets of cinder blocks in front of the ICE facility gate in Paramount, California. And apparently the date on these, the delivery date, was the day before the protests kicked off. This is very interesting because we saw this happen during the BLM riots as well. Remember those pallets of bricks? As opposed to cinder blocks, there was bricks at a lot of the protests mysteriously placed in different parts of the cities that were protesting.
I'm willing to bet dimes of dollars that you believe this to be a Native American. But there's a little bit more to this story than you think. See, this is Mr. Curtis Edward. And I know what you're thinking. What the fuck could this guy possibly have to do with Native Americans? Well, let me tell you a little story. Once again, going back to, the same fucking people over and over again. Mr. Morgan was the one that hired him to create the the North American Indian. Spent about $75,000 over 5 years, the equivalent to $1.5 million today, to make 20 volumes with 1,500 photographs to erase the originals.
So this woman said black people need to be exterminated, then created an organization to help do it. And now her name is on clinics all over the country. So the lady name is Margaret, and Margaret has an issue. You know them annoying weeds that grow uncontrollably? She believed blacks were the human version of those weeds and needed to be exterminated. And this is literally her direct quote. So she created something called the Negro Project, which you probably heard of. But what you probably didn't hear is that it was built on a plan to stop black people from reproducing. And the crazy part about it is she found a way to use feminism to make genocide look like empowerment. Now, it's a lady named Hillary, and Hillary is married to a man named William. And William isn't just the average man. He becomes the 42nd president of the United States. And Hillary is a big fan of Margaret and her work. Yes, she's literally a fan of a woman who wanted to exterminate black people. So fast forward to 2016, Hillary ends up running for president herself. And the crazy part about it is, the lady that's a fan of the black exterminator ends up getting majority of the black vote. Literally 91%. And according to Hillary, she admires Margaret's vision enormously. And Margaret is called the birth control pioneer. But the truth, she wasn't just trying to give women choices. She was trying to control who was allowed to exist. See, she believed in a movement called eugenics. This weird idea that certain people were unfit to reproduce. And unfortunately, black people were on the unfit list. In her own words, she said, we don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And that's a letter she wrote in 1939. And that's not a conspiracy. That's archive history. In the 1930s, she launched something called the Negro Project, which we briefly touched on earlier. Sounds like a charity, right? Nah. It was literally a campaign to convince black people to reduce their own numbers. And I know what you're thinking. How'd she do that? See, look, she was smart. She knew she couldn't just roll up to a black community and say, hey, stop having kids. So she recruited black ministers, doctors, and even nurses to spread her message. She said, and I quote, that black leaders were the key to keeping the project under the radar. This wasn't about health. This was about population control. And the crazy thing about it is, it worked. She rapped genocide in a language of empowerment.
Y'all remember who this is? Ashley Babbitt. She was the woman who died during the January 6th insurrection. She was deep inside the Capitol with a group of people. There were doors that were locked. There was a Secret Service agent with a gun on the other side telling them not to come in, despite the fact they were trying to break in. They finally smashed a window. She went to climb through it. She was shot and killed. Her fuck around found out. Which, of course, propelled her into MAGA martyrdom. And then her family filed a lawsuit against the federal government for wrongful death. They were asking $5 million. Of course, the government was fighting that. And then Trump took office and said, we're not going to fight this lawsuit anymore. We're going to settle with them. Well, they were asking for $5 million. If you're going to settle with them, generally what that means is, hey, we'll give you, $500,000 or $1 million. But that's not what's happening. They announced they're settling for $5 million. They're going to pay the full $5 million out of taxpayer money. They are going to give the family of a woman who entered the Capitol illegally, who was part of a violent group that was trying to break into a secured area where an armed Secret Service agent was telling them to stay out, and she went to go in anyway, and she died as a result. And now, taxpayers are going to pay her family $5 million. I thought this administration's whole thing was no more government waste. Saving taxpayer dollars, not wasting it on shit. Doge. Only that's been a shit show too. Despite Trump's promised cuts, U.S. spent more than $200 billion more in the first 100 days than it did last year. How is spending $200 billion more saving us money? Oh, and another thing giving her family $5 million does, it opens up the door for anyone who's arrested in association with January 6th to seek damages, to come after the federal government and say, I had to experience this because of my own actions, and I didn't like it, so you should compensate me. And this sets a precedent of Yeah, we will. How much do you want?
Yesterday, there was another congregation of this white supremacist group, and this time it was outside of the Department of Immigration, where they were holding a racist xenophobic banner. It was then followed by racist and white supremacist chants associated with polarizing racist historical figures. The leader of this protest, which is Joel Davis, he was chanting, calling Australia for the white man, which, as you can see in this video, there was no police on site. Again, this is a pure example of public act of hate speech within public areas, which should be a offense. This time, they did it in daylight. And honestly, Victoria Police, what are you guys doing to crack down on these type of behaviors that is not making anyone within this country safe? And they are weaponizing concern to normalize their white supremacist and white nationalist views. Way to target the African community within Australia. Because this is not about protest, it's about a hate campaign that is being normalized. Create racial scapegoating to blame specific communities. And collectively, crimes are not only based on race. They claim to care about safety, but their ideologies and actions is rooted in violence.
Cops from all over the country have used the Police Explorers program to SA minors. Just this last week, a police officer in Washington state was charged with first-degree misconduct with a minor and third-degree grape. I hate not being able to say the real word. This officer groomed a teenage girl who was a high school student and was potentially interested in one day becoming a law enforcement officer. She said that she first trusted him because he was a cop, but then she said she was pressured and manipulated. This wasn't even the first time he was accused of misconduct with a minor. Back in 2014, he was accused of inappropriately touching a 10-year-old. And though he has been arrested and charged, he is still listed as the city's main contact for the Police Explorers program. One of the most notorious examples of child abuse by police officers in the Police Explorers program was that of Sandra Birchmore. At 15, she joined the Police Explorers program and started to be groomed by police officer Matthew Farwell. She was essayed by both him and later his brother before she eventually fell pregnant with Matthew Farwell's child. Before giving birth, she was found dead. Matthew Farwell has been charged with taking her life.
Come on, Ray Charles, you ain't gotta lie now. I'm over here. I'm over here. Can you see me?
What kind of ignorance is this?
Come on, man.
What kind of ignorance is this? What kind of ignorance is this?
You sure?
Sir, where is your sergeant?
He's at
Where
lunch.
is your sergeant?
He's at lunch, man. He takes a long
Where is
lunch.
your sergeant?
It's just me and you in
I do
here.
not deserve this kind of treatment or behavior.
Come on
I
now.
have done nothing wrong. I have not even gotten my phone call. You are the most disrespectful, arrogant person I've ever met in my life.
This is another one of them tricks y'all be pulling. I know how it is. Okay, so you're blind today, but tomorrow you're gonna be deaf. Next week you're gonna have your leg into one of them fake boots.
Sir,
I know how it goes.
Nothing wrong. And you are just blatantly disrespectful.
I know how you guys
treat
act.
me like this.
I know how you do it. You're out there selling them drugs.
There's no drugs. What kind of person are you?
Using this blind thing so you can sell them drugs. I
Where's
bet.
your sergeant? Where is your sergeant?
I told you.
need to speak.
No one thinks it's a good idea to lock up farm workers and construction workers. So why is the Trump administration doing it? I'm a civil rights lawyer and I work in a rural county where the federal government has been mass arresting farm workers with no criminal convictions. These are people who literally put food on our tables, and many of them have American citizen kids who are now basically orphaned. It doesn't make any sense, not for the economy, not for Americans, not for our country. But the reason the Trump administration is doing this is because many of these people end up in concentration camps. These camps aren't run by the federal government, they're run by private for-profit prison companies. One is Geo, whose stocks went up 50% when Trump got elected. Another is Core Civic. For each person that is in these camps, these companies charge American taxpayers $120,000. So the amount of people you see in this video, that's a few $1,000,000. Then these companies donate a percentage of their profits back to Trump and rinse and repeat. This is Trump's art of the deal. Lock hardworking people up away from their families, pay with taxpayer money, and profit.
Targeted by snipers.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you can tell us how often that would happen
Every
on
day.
a daily basis.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
There's not a doc that's been there that probably can't testify that they didn't see kids shot in the head. I myself saw 2 children that were not shot just in the head, but in the chest first. bullet holes exactly where I would put a stethoscope, and a second bullet hole directly in the side of a temple. One father, whose photograph of is I look at every night, explained to me how his kid was ripped out of his hand, and he went looking for him on the ground and couldn't find him. 10 meters away, he found his kid and looked at him while he got shot the second time. But his father thought that was the first time. When he came to us, he had no organs. When I rolled him over, he had no organs. A classic high-velocity bullet wound is a small entrance hole the size of the bullet, and the exit wound is capacious. An American football was the size of the hole in the kid's back. Everything between his shoulder blades and every organ in his chest was missing, including his spine. When I rolled him over, my hand fell into his chest, feeling his rib cage, and then when I rolled him back, the dressing fell off his head, and I saw his brains coming out of the other side. This kid was 6 years old. Next to him was another kid at the same time, who likewise had a hole directly in the center of his chest, went right in front of his ear and came out of his neck. And no kid, and I've said this on many outlets, but it's the truth and it stands. No kid gets shot twice by mistake by a sniper. It doesn't happen by mistake. They were deliberately targeted. And that's not beyond a war crime. That's targeted assassinations and it helps me formulate my opinion of what's really occurring in Gaza.
What are they after? Why are they doing it?
Well, if you want to move a country from a free individualistic economy,
which we have.
Yes, or had.
Or had, okay.
To a planned economy, you have to do it through the schools. You have to dumb down and brainwash, change the attitudes and values. You have to completely, social engineering has to go on constantly. And many teachers know what I'm talking about. And people are going to say, well, when did this start? And who on earth ever did this? Why would a plan like that be allowed to be carried out?
That's right.
Well, then you have to go back to 1934, which I will do, and we have to go to the three-pronged fork, okay? So I do think that the watershed year, although you can go back to the early part of the century when the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation were deeply involved in education, and that it was decided then that Carnegie would deal with the international part and Rockefeller domestic. They commissioned the American Historical Association to put together a study of the social studies, and they came up with lots of volumes, but I have one little volume, Conclusions and Recommendations for the Social Studies. And basically that little one is an original book. I wish I'd brought it with me. Too bad. But I don't even dare let it out of the house. It's so important. It called for changing the United States through the schools from a free individualistic economy to a socialist, collectivized, planned economy in the New World Order.
It says that in the book?
Yes.
And that book was written when?
In 1934.
By who?
It was the Carnegie Corporation paid for it. The American Historical Association put it together.
My research for my master's thesis talks about enslaved cooks from Charleston.
The chief instructor at the Culinary Institute of Charleston stirs emotions as he adds ingredients to this one-pot dish. Listen as he explains what enslaved people did to prove they were not eating their master's food.
So there's stories of this thing called the whistling walk, where enslaved would come from a main kitchen and they would be carrying food in their hand, and as they're carrying this food in their hand, they have to whistle. The whistling in the eyes of the slaveholder means that because you're whistling, you don't have the time, or you can't eat my food.
People have started to understand that Waymos are a part of the surveillance state. The Waymos are cops. Waymos are cops because they have cameras and etc. That data is being turned over to the police. So these cars are being used to spy on people. And as the Waymos are going through town, people are looking at them and being like, you're recording us. You are recording these protests so that you can hand it then over to law enforcement and they'll come after us. There is this growing anger and pushback on the fact that we live in a surveillance state. As more people become aware of drones, of other forms of surveillance that the cops are constantly engaging in to spy on people. They are spying on you. Wherever you are, they are spying on you. They have invaded your communities.
A diferença toda é que chamam muita atenção. Olha, eu vou falar uma coisa do tempo da minha avó, que já dizia para minha mãe, olha, é bom ter que achar um branco para se casar, que é para melhorar a raça. E isso continua até hoje.
There's a painting called The Redenção de Khan. And the painting portrays the actual story of Brazil. So you have a picture of the dark black-skinned grandmother. She has her hands in the air. Next to her, seated, is her mulatta daughter. She obviously had a relationship with a white man, so her daughter is progressively lighter skinned. Next to the mulatta daughter is the Portuguese immigrant. He's white. And in the mulatta daughter's arms is the white son. So after 2 to 3 generations, the blackness of the family has completely disappeared. And so the black grandmother is giving thanks to God, like, thank you for moving this black stain from my family.
Que a minha família, eu falei, daqui uns anos, não vai ter mais ninguém negro.
Your white skin is so beautiful. Why do you go to the beach and burn yourself to a crisp trying to get brown if it's so wonderful to be white? And if you love your thin lips, why are you going to the doctor getting collagen injected and telling me my lips are too big? Don't, that's my thing. That trips me out. Whenever, white girls come to me, oh, your butt is so big. And it's like, well, why do you go get on that stair stepper at Holiday Health Spa trying to get your butt as big as mine? And being white is so wonderful. I don't understand why all these white teenagers don't stay white.
We are the capital of diversity. 180 languages spoken in our school system.
I saw someone say, why don't they ever teach African history in our schools? And I had to pause, because it's not that they can't teach it, it's that they don't want to, especially when it makes Europe look like the monster that it really was. So let me put you on to something you probably didn't learn in school. Germany's first genocide didn't happen in Europe. It happened in Africa. The year was 1904. Germany had colonized what we now call Namibia. And when the Herero and Nama people resisted, not violently, just refused to be erased, Germany responded with brutality that'll make your stomach churn. They poisoned wells. They pushed entire communities into the desert and cut off their access to food and water. They built death camps. They chained people up, used them for forced labor and medical experiments, even beheaded them and shipped their skulls back to Berlin, all in the name of research. Not as evidence of war crimes, but trophies. Sound familiar? Because it should. Germany tested their genocidal playbook on African soil before the Holocaust. And then they exported that same cold, calculated violence to Europe decades later. But nobody talks about that, likely because black pain isn't considered historic. It's considered disposable. And don't let anybody tell you this was a long time ago. Germany didn't even acknowledge what had happened until 2021. And their apology came with no real reparation, just a PR stunt and a press release. They still haven't returned all the stolen bones. They haven't paid back the families that lost generation. They still haven't put this genocide in German textbooks. And the US, silent. Because when the West says never again, they really mean never again to white people. But when you ask why African history isn't taught, they can't teach you the truth without admitting that they're still protecting the people that committed the crimes. Germany practiced genocide in Africa. They perfected it, then pretended like it started in Europe. We're not supposed to remember, we're supposed to move on. But memory is resistance. And I'm here to say their silence doesn't protect them anymore.